Sharp eye. That's what they say about a person who can accurately estimate something by eye, something that ordinary people can't do, only electronics can. The American Dr. Tracy Hall was truly a diamond among ordinary people. He was the first in the world to carry out a documented synthesis of diamond, using equipment of his own design. And how did the company General Electric, where he worked, reward him? They gave him a $10 bond. As you may know, naturally formed diamonds are created from carbon that is subjected to extreme pressure and heat at a depth of about 100 to 200 kilometers. Despite the work of many scientists on synthesis over the years, the first synthetic diamonds were created only in 1954 by a certain Howard Tracy Hall. Hall was born in 1919 in Ogden, Utah. As a child, Hall learned about Thomas Edison and quickly became fascinated with the inventor. It is known that as a child he promised that one day he would work at Edison's company, General Electric. Hall received his bachelor's degree in 1942. World War II interrupted his studies. After being enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1944, Hall studied radar and electronics at Harvard University. He served as a warrant officer until 1946, before returning to university and earning his Ph.D. in chemistry. Then he fulfilled his childhood dream. He traveled across the country to work at the General Electric Laboratory in New York. He was hired because he was a highly sought-after specialist of his time. The company hired Hall as a chemist for the team of the recently launched Superpressure project, which was aimed at creating the first synthetic diamonds. General Electric spent $125,000, about $1.5 million today, on a press capable of creating electronics, Superpressure. This purchase also required the company to build a 3-story building specifically to house it. The expensive acquisition didn't pay off. The physicists on the team conducted failed experiments time and again. Hall thought that the company and the team that developed the machine approached the problem incorrectly and believed there was a better and simpler way. He believed that with a few modifications and a specially designed device, he could use the older and cheaper 35-year-old Watson-Stillman press to do this job. But when he approached his superiors for the thousands of dollars he thought were necessary to complete the modifications, they refused him. A group of leading physicists insisted that synthesis was only possible on a new press. In addition to Hall being denied money for modifications, the company also gave priority in machining to the physicists from the Superpressure project team. However, Hall did not let the management's lack of interest and skepticism in the project stop him. He convinced an acquaintance who was a mechanic to help him after hours in assembling the newly developed belt apparatus. However, since the steel available in the mechanic's workshop was not strong enough to withstand the extreme pressure, he turned again to the management of General Electric. He asked them to purchase a substance called carbaloy, which consisted of 6% cobalt and 94% tungsten carbide. Thanks to the intervention of a sympathetic supervisor, who had once made sure that Hall got a job on the Superpressure team, the company eventually bought carbaloy for Hall. When his machine was finally built, Hall began experimenting with it. It took him several attempts to create synthetic diamonds before he found the right method. On December 16, 1954, Hall was working alone in the laboratory, after the rest of the staff had already gone home for the Christmas holidays. Later, he described his discovery like this: "My hands started to shake. My heart was beating fast. My knees grew weak and could no longer support me. My eyes caught the flashing light of dozens of tiny crystals." Hall conducted the experiment several more times to make sure it wasn't a coincidence, and each time he got the same result. Then he asked his colleague to conduct the test himself. Just like Hall, he successfully used the press on New Year's Eve of 1954 to create synthetic diamonds. When Tracy Hall told his bosses at General Electric about the success achieved with the improvised device, they were skeptical. Basically, it was a device that could be assembled in a garage with a little bit of know-how. Their skepticism disappeared when they witnessed the experiment themselves. Hall left the building specifically before the test so that they couldn't claim he had somehow faked the results. After thoroughly making sure that this method was consistently reproducible, the company announced that it had created the world's first synthetic diamonds. However, initially, they claimed that it was more of a team effort by physicists and other researchers within the Superpressure project, rather than Hall working on the project on his own and simply modifying the old press to suit his goals. They also stated that the diamonds in the expensive press. General Electric invested a lot of money in the press and the team they assembled for its development and use, and they were not eager to admit to the world that all of it was a waste of time, and that the diamonds in question were created on Hall's leaky, old, and easily accessible apparatus. The last point worried them especially because they didn't want people to know that practically anyone familiar with the design could build this thing without much expense. Later, some people did exactly that as soon as the details of the invention became known. Knowing the real story of the discovery of the synthesis, the company decided to give Dr. Hall his due, albeit not publicly, for the brilliant discovery that saved the company an incredible sum of money, for being the first among scientists and engineers to create something that previously took billions of years to form. General Electric awarded Hall a U.S. savings bond worth $10, which is about $85. Dr. Tracy Hall commented on such incredible generosity. Big deal. That $10 slap in the face was the last straw. If Hall had been given the proper recognition, and not the team of physicists, it can be said with absolute certainty that Hall would have received the Nobel Prize. Be that as it may, disappointed with his fate, Tracy Hall wasted no time and began looking for another job. Being involved in the team that managed to create synthetic diamonds was certainly valuable, a unique experience in itself, even if the public didn't know the whole truth. So Hall had no shortage of job offers. However, instead of going to work for another company, Hall accepted an offer from Brigham Young University in Utah to become a professor of chemistry and director of research. Although his original intention was to continue his research on the belt apparatus, the United States government decided that the invention was too important for the doctor to continue working in this direction. They placed a secrecy order on the apparatus and effectively forbade him from working with the device or talking about how it was made. Violating the terms of the secrecy order would result in a large monetary fine and imprisonment. But Tracy Hall was not one to give up easily, and he didn't just surrender. He circumvented the secrecy order within a year by simply inventing a completely different machine, a tetrahedral press that did the same thing as his original, but technically didn't violate the order. Moreover, his new device could potentially fall under a possible General Electric patent for his original machine, which he had invented while still at the company. Nevertheless, some people in the government didn't like such workarounds, and at first, the doctor was threatened with 2 years in prison and a $10,000 fine for inventing this machine. In addition, his new machine was placed under a court-issued non-disclosure order. Fortunately for Dr. Hall, time passed and the mood in the government changed, and the restrictions were lifted. After years of inactivity due to dissatisfied politicians and scientists, Dr. Hall once again began to improve and publish his developments. Subsequently, Hall published about 150 peer-reviewed articles and won research grants totaling more than $1 million. He even became the co-founder of his own very successful synthetic diamond company called Mega Diamond, which still exists to this day. In retirement from his investments, Dr. Hall became a farmer. He passed away in July 2008 at the age of 88. In his later years, when the scientist was asked about his most important achievement in life, Hall simply said, "Home and family." That's the most important thing? That's the story of a brilliant scientist who spent half his life fighting against a major corporation and influential politicians, and managed to win. And what else could Tracy Hall have invented if he hadn't spent part of his life on lawsuits and disputes with the ungrateful management of General Electric? Who knows? Thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.